Part 12. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 111. Tangwan doesn't know this. She is learning something new. In Tangwan's small world, only by learning more things in a limited time can we survive. This habit has been retained by her to this day. Knowledge can change destiny. All the friends who participated in the program have returned to their homes, and they also have to go to class. There are also some private lessons. Lu Lin was in the living room downstairs. Sitting across from him was a man in a suit. He looked very gentle, had slightly curly chestnut hair, and was very approachable. It's just that the words you say are not so gentle. There is no problem with Miss Tang's vocal cords, and there is no problem with her body except for some malnutrition. She can't speak because of psychological reasons. Is psychological intervention needed? Lu Lin shook his head. He looked at the closed room upstairs to make sure that Tangwan would not come out, and then replied, "No need." But the psychiatrist in front of me disagreed. With all due respect to Mr. Lu, if you have psychological problems, you need to see a doctor. This is not something that is difficult to talk about. Lu Lin heard the psychiatrist's indignant tone and knew that he had misunderstood her. But he was not prepared to answer the psychiatrist's questions. Just nodded and asked the psychiatrist to be invited out. The housekeeper came to Lu Lin's side and replied in a low voice, "I have already asked him to go out, and he will not be allowed to come again." Lu Lin nodded and stood up from his seat. Just as he was about to go upstairs, a stranger's voice suddenly came from the door. The housekeeper looked at the news and had a strange expression on his face for a moment, and then said, "Master Lu, Mr. Si is here to visit." Lu Lin frowned fiercely when he heard the name, and said with some displeasure, "What does it mean that Si psychopath doesn't stay at his house and we come here all day long?" The housekeeper did not dare to speak. How could he guess the thoughts of these rich people? He has heard a little bit about the Secretary General. He is obviously a person who has difficulty moving and is not in good mental condition. If it were not for his excellent business vision, the SI group would have collapsed long ago. The housekeeper doesn't understand this and only knows the superficial information. After all, the SI group has always been mysterious, and they generally do not come out to the public. It is extremely lucky to be able to see him once or twice. I just don't know why the CEO likes to run to the Lu family so much. If someone else comes to visit, Lu Lin can refuse without hesitation. Kessie's is different. Their family has a deep cooperative relationship with the Lu family, and Lu Lin gritted his teeth and reluctantly let Si drive the car in. Said to the steward on the side, "Okay, let's prepare some tea for him, so as not to say that we didn't take good care of him." Tangwan, who was on the second floor, vaguely heard the conversation downstairs. He took off his earphones and went to the window. With his little head popping up, he saw the man in the wheelchair. She remembered this man. He is Grandma C's son, named Si. He looked very thin, and the nerves in his body were tense, as if they were about to break. But it was as if tough vines had grown out of his body, supporting his tattered body and surviving in this colorful world. Tangwan didn't know why, but he always felt that he was unhappy in his life. He seemed to have died, leaving only this empty body wandering around the world. But Tangwan had a good impression of Si and Grandma Si. Although they don't like to laugh and are not gentle, Tangwan wants them to be happy for some reason. Tangwan put down the furry hat on her head, wore the same clothes as a little raccoon, and skipped downstairs. The housekeeper who was about to go upstairs to ask Tangwan to come downstairs was almost hit by Tangwan. Fortunately, Tangwan stopped his movements in time and did not hit the housekeeper. She was rarely so rash. She pressed her hat uneasily, picked up Lu Lin's newly bought tablet, and wrote a sentence on it. "I'm sorry, Grandpa Yao, I did not do it on purpose." Butler Yao wished that Tang Wan would be more lively, but with such a small weight, it would not be a problem for him at all. So the housekeeper shook his head and his attitude was too mild to be true. It's okay, come down quickly, the boss is always here to see you. Tang Wan nodded and ran away quickly. The round tail behind her also swayed according to Tang Wan's movements, which was very cute. Butler Yao couldn't help but take out his cell phone, take a photo, and send it to the Lu family's family group. Yao Guanjia, Miss Tang is so cute. Whose family does this little raccoon belong to? Lu Zi, the happy puppy who cooperates best with Butler Yao, took the lead in attacking. Master Lu, it's from my family, it's from my family. I want to kidnap Tang Tang. Great Demon King of the mainland? Lu Zi, can you say it again? I'm sorry, mother, TT, my aunt belongs to everyone. It slides and kneels very smoothly. This little episode was not known to Tang Wan. Tang Wan doesn't like to use chat tools very much. All electronic devices are learning tools in Tang Wan's hands. She rarely uses the chat function. Tang Wan ran downstairs and heard the sentence. I heard that the Si family adopted Sujiajia, why are you preparing to cultivate a successor? Tang Wan paused slightly when he heard Sujiajia's name, and the movements of his feet slowed down suddenly. Has Sujiajia been adopted by Grandma Si? Tang Wan knew that he should congratulate Sujiajia. After all, Grandma Si was different from Dean Su. Grandma Si is a very upright adult, and the children she teaches will definitely be upright when they grow up. But for some reason, Tang Wan felt some strange emotions in his heart. She blinked her eyes and suppressed the emotions in her heart. She should be happy. I should congratulate Grandma Si on having a lovely granddaughter, and congratulate Sujiajia on having a new family. However, the next second, Tang Wan heard Si Hui say in that cold voice, how is that possible? Our family will not adopt at will. At this point, Tang Wan seemed to hear the contempt in Si Hui's tone. But the next second, Si Hui's voice was filled with some indescribable emotions. Adoption is something that only needs to be done once. Lu Lin looked at the little head peeking out from the stairs and waved to Tang Wan. What are you doing standing there, come here. Tang Wan felt the gazes of Lu Lin and Si Hui, and pressed the hat on his head with some embarrassment, then trotted to Lu Lin's side. Lu Lin picked up Tang Wan, but found that Si Hui's eyes had been falling on Tang Wan, and coughed lightly, okay, I don't belong to you anymore, so please stop looking at her. Tang Wan quietly turned his head and met those cold-looking eyes. Then he was slightly startled. Now Lu Lin, don't look at it, it doesn't belong to you. Later Lu Lin, %#%, star. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 112. Those eyes looked familiar to Tang Wan. But Huainan and Kyoto are in the south and north, more than 2,000 kilometers apart, so where did I see these eyes? These eyes seemed to contain snow that would never melt, and a lonely mood condensed in his sight. Tang Wan just glanced at it and then looked away. It's so sad. He looked so sad. Like a winged bird whose partner has died, living alone in this goalless world. Si Hui came here, it seemed, just to take a look at Tang Wan and make sure she was fine before leaving. Just said something in a subtle way before leaving, she is very worried about you, but she is very busy during this time, so she can't come to see you. Tang Wan nodded obediently. She knew that Grandma Si was kind to her. When you have time, you can come to Si's house to stay with her. After saying this, Si Hui left. Tang Wan looked at his back and felt that he was really lonely. It is that kind of deathly loneliness. Suddenly, a pair of hands pinched Tang Wan's cheeks and pulled them to both sides. It doesn't hurt, just a little awkward. Lu Lin's voice came from Tang Wan's head, why are you still watching? You are the of our family. Tang Wan nodded and made gestures with his hands. Yes, yes, it's brother Lu Lin's Zizai. Lu Lin was soothed by Tang Wan's attitude. He let go of his hand, gently rubbed Tang Wan's cheek, and then said, "Okay, as long as you know he's from my family. Don't run away with others." Tang Wan felt that Lu Lin was overthinking safety. She won't run away. Only here in Lu Lin, it is a treasure. Others will not treat themselves as treasures. She knows the difference between good and bad. Time flies by, and Tang Wan's life is gradually getting back on track. But obviously, some people are unwilling to let her go. Country Y. Sicily, Catholic Church. The priest leads the believers to praise and believe in God in the church. The man sitting on the seat was dressed in black, with a black hat on his head, playing with a silver lighter in his hand. The child next to him said in fluent Sicilian, "Godfather, I don't want to hear them say this." The man just touched the little boy's head lovingly and said, "Foor, you are still young and don't know how good God is." The little boy just snorted and replied nonchalantly, "Can God bring wealth?" Of course the man replied without hesitation, his eyes narrowed slightly, like a fierce wolf king, "He will bring us supreme glory. We believe in God and want to send those pagans to God. This is what we as believers should do." As soon as he finished speaking, a somewhat thin figure was pressed in from the door. If Sully were here, she would be able to recognize at a glance that she is a monkey from Huainan. He was beaten to a bruised nose and face, his limbs were broken in many places, and they were abnormally twisted. His whole body looked like a rag, and he was dragged to the church. Along the way, his blood was like pen and ink, drawing a red trace. Bright and eye-catching. The man stretched out his fingers and tapped the handle, and asked in an even gentle manner, "What's going on? It's not good to stain my carpet." The monkey could not understand a word he said, so he had to rely on the translator beside him. The man glanced at the monkey and asked, "Who is he?" After the translator finished speaking to the monkey, he looked at the monkey and kept silent. He raised his foot and kicked the monkey, and then cursed. "If I ask you something, say it quickly." The monkey was in pain. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood with several of his teeth in it. There was wind in his mouth, and he said intermittently, not daring to hide anything, that woman, girl, ran away. He said this with his broken hair covering his eyes. Also covered up his panic and hatred. The monkey originally wanted to run. In China, human trafficking is not a crime that can be overcome with just a few nice words. What's more, they only have one or two things on their hands. If he is found out, he will be shot. So the monkey hurriedly ran away and went abroad. However, before he could run very far, he was caught by this man's men, and he was blindfolded all the way to here. At first the monkey tried to run away, but as soon as he ran away, he was beaten severely. "Now that I know that I can't escape, I am honest." Monkey wanted to say something else, but he saw the man slowly stood up and took out a weapon from his waist that would never appear in the country. Then he said something. Ciao. Italian, hello/goodbye. With a bump sound, the bullet penetrated the monkey's head, and blood exploded, making the man's black clothes darker. A few drops of blood fell on his face, slowly sliding down his cheeks. A few drops of blood fell on the little boy's face, but he just wiped it with a frown and complained, "Blood splattered all over me, so dirty." But the man said, "This is what we should do." "What a pity, it seems you are going to the east with me." Fur raised his eyelids slightly, and his voice was as cold as the man's, "Godfather, we can't get in at all. Customs will stop us." "Really? Then we have to find a middleman, which is a lot of money." The man said this, but there was no expression of distress on his face because he had to spend money. No one cares about the dead monkey on the ground. He was thrown into the rough sea. After all, it is normal for some people to encounter shipwrecks during this period. On the other side, Tang Wan finished today's homework, washed up, returned to bed obediently, and slowly closed his eyes. It's that dream again. The woman is still busy. She looks slender, her hair is meticulously combed, and she is busy in the kitchen seriously. Tang Wan struggled to get in front of the woman. She wanted to see the woman's face. This is very important to her. However, the door suddenly rang. Dong dong dong. The voice is urgent, as if urging. Tang Wan saw the woman put down the kitchen utensils in her hands, wiped them casually on her apron, and was about to go to the door. Tang Wan struggled to reach out his hand. I want to shout, don't go. Don't open the door. Do not go. Come back quickly. But she couldn't make a sound. Tang tang. Tang tang, wake up quickly. Tang Wan opened his eyes suddenly, and what he saw was Lu Yao's worried face. She looked at Tang Wan, stretched out her hand and touched Tang Wan's head, feeling a little hot. Have a little fever. Tang Wan's head was dizzy and she wanted to get up and go to school, but Lu Yao held her down. Okay, if you're sick, take a good rest. If you don't go to school once, the school won't run away. Thanks to Luo Huawei and Lu Lihuan for their monthly votes, I love you. Also, Beizai gave me the recommendation vote. QWQ, am I blind? Why can't I see the recommendation votes? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 113. Tang Wan heard Lu Yao's words and followed her movements, slowly lying back on the bed. Just refuse to close my eyes. In the orphanage, no one would treat Tang Wan so gently. She never received preferential treatment because she was sick. In her memory, it seems that no one asked her to have a good rest. But soon, a figure flashed in Tang Wan's head. That figure made Tang Wan feel a little dazed. Perhaps it's not that she hasn't received preferential treatment, but she just doesn't remember it. Tang Wan has never been so eager to retrieve his memory. I want to know who I was with when I was younger. But no matter what she thought, her mind was blank. That vague layer of fog in Tang Wan's mind split her and the past into two, leaving only this Tang Wan stumbling in the world. Lu Yao helped Tang Wan press the quilt to make sure that the little boy was under the quilt. As soon as she raised her head, she saw Tang Wan looking at her with misty eyes. She couldn't help but stretched out her hand to rub Tang Wan's soft head. Then he said, go to sleep peacefully, I'll be with you. Tang Wan couldn't bear to close her eyes. Lu Yao's heart melted looking at such a well-behaved little boy. Lu Zi, that stinky boy, still acted like a dog in front of outsiders, but when he returned home, he was like a runaway mad dog, running around. Where can Tang Wan be so well-behaved? Like a kitten. Lu Yao took children's antipyretic medicine and warm water in her hand, and asked Tang Wan to take the medicine with her hand. Then he fell into a deep sleep. Lu Yao looked at Tang Wan who was sleeping and tiptoed out. After the variety show stopped filming, Lu Lin will start filming again. And because of this high fever, Tang Wan also brought out the symptoms of previous physical losses. Need to rest for a while. Lu Zai suddenly became quiet. Lu Zi heard that Tang Wan had been staying at Lu Zai to take care of his health and not going out anywhere, so he spontaneously prepared to visit Tang Wan with his friends. This time he didn't take Go 11 with him. It's not because I don't want to take Go 11 with me, but because Go 11 has gone to training and won't be back for a while. The one who came was Chenchuo, the little boy who spoke poorly. This time he did not bring his computer with him, but he became more and more silent, looking at Lu Zi with a somewhat unkind look. Tang Wan was a little surprised. She took out her tablet and wrote on it. How did you come? Chen Shuo pursed his lips, with a bit of blue under his eyes, and said angrily, it's not because this person dragged me here. Tang Wan understands. I person is e person's toy. This personality classification was new to Tang Wan during this period. I thought it was interesting, so I wrote it down. Lu Ziyi on the side saw that Tang Wan was almost in good health, so he suggested going out to play. Lu Ziyi cannot be kept at home, he really likes to hang out outside. Tang Wan didn't want to go out at first. But Lu Ziyi couldn't hold him back and hugged Tang Wan directly. Lu Ziyi's behavior frightened the housekeeper on the side. He hurriedly stepped forward and wanted to Tang Wan back from Lu Ziyi's hands, but he was afraid that Lu Ziyi would not hold Tang Wan and Tang Wan would fall to the ground. In the end, he could only stand there hesitantly and said to Lu Ziyi, young Master Lu, please put Miss Tang Wan down quickly. Lu Ziyi frowned, with a look like I won't listen, I'll keep the housekeeper chanting sutras, and walked out with Tang Wan in his arms. How dare others stop me? We could only let Lu Ziyi walk out. The housekeeper watched the three cubs go out and quickly called Lu Yao. No, miss, young Master Lu is taking the third miss out. Lu Yao. Lu Yao thought that Tang Wan had been staying at home during this period, so she pressed her temples and said, let them go out to play. This period of time has also crushed that brat. Have someone follow you in the dark, so you don't get kidnapped. The housekeeper can only make arrangements according to Lu Yao's words. Just a little worried. He looked at the sunlight shining on Tang Wan's body, seeming to give her a gentle light. The world seems to have finally begun to favor her. The three little cubs finally went out, and of course their destination was an amusement park that Tang Wan had never been to before. Lu Ziyi held Tang Wan tightly, fearing that if he turned around, Tang Wan would disappear from his eyes. Chen Shuo followed them, as silent as a shadow. But his eyes were always on Tang Wan, and those cold eyes revealed a puzzlement that he didn't even notice. It seemed that whenever there was Tang Wan, his eyes would always fall on Tang Wan involuntarily. Chen Shuo felt that this was wrong. In his self-sustained life, there should not be such a being who could easily change his goals. Even this time he went out, he was changed when he heard the name Tang Wan. He should not appear on the noisy street, but should be in a quiet study, doing what he likes. Suddenly, Tang Wan, who had been walking in front with Lu Ziyi, turned his head and looked at Chen Shuo. Those black eyes reflected Chen Shuo's figure. Then he let out a soft ah, as if calling Chen Shuo to hurry up and follow him. Chen Shuo lowered his eyes, pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and followed Tang Wan. He thought it was probably because Tang Wan always cared about everyone, so he couldn't help but look at Tang Wan, right? Want to see when Tang Wan can discover himself. Tang Wan didn't know what Chen Shuo was thinking. He just felt that it was inappropriate for Chen Shuo to go out to play together but always walk behind alone. Since they came together, they should go together. Lu Ziyi looked at the jumping machine in front of him with greed, and asked Tang Wan and Chen Shuo to stand together while he queued up to buy tickets. Suddenly, a little boy with white hair walked over from the side. He wore sunglasses on his face, and his skin was slightly dark and red. But he said, "Chi bella chiese." Italian, you are so good looking. Tang Wan didn't understand what he said, so she just turned her head and looked at him. He is different from the children Tang Wan has seen, and he looks very dangerous. Tang Wan subconsciously curled up his fingers and quietly clenched them into a fist. She felt that the blood in her body seemed to have cooled down at this moment. But even so, Tang Wan's first reaction was to grab Chen Shuo beside him. The little boy seemed not to notice Tang Wan's guard against him, but instead moved closer and closer to Tang Wan. Under the brown sunglasses, there is a pair of blue eyes, like a blue ocean. In Chinese that I am not very proficient in, I said word by word, "You are so nice, look. Can you make my doll?" Tang Wan understood what he said, and so did Chen Chuo. Chen Chuo frowned, picked up Tang Wan, and moved away from the weird little boy. He said, "What are you doing? Stay away from us. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him." Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 114. Tang Wan clearly saw the little boy's eyes hidden under the brown sunglasses moving and slowly falling on Chen Chuo. Like a poisonous snake. Tang Wan thought to himself. Chen Chuo's indifference was one of indifference, but the look in the eyes of the little boy in front of him was one of solemnity. It is the indifference of not paying attention to anything. Tang Wan didn't know why a little boy who didn't look a few years older than him had such a look in his eyes. But she, who has a very strong sense of nature, just wants to stay away from this little boy. Stay away from him. The little boy seemed to retreat a little because of Chen Chuo's words. Then he shrugged, seemingly not taking Chen Chuo's words to heart. But the confrontation between the three of them was watched by Sujiajia in the dark. Sujiajia was wearing a doll costume, holding a mobile phone in her hand, and sweat was dripping from her forehead. Things are getting weirder and weirder. Sujiajia came out because she received a text message from the monkey. The Sci-fi family members used the name of protection during this period to prevent Sujiajia from running around. So Sujiajia ran out secretly this time. No one told anyone. But when she arrived at her destination, she only saw a foreign boy, so she never came out. It wasn't until she saw the foreign boy talking to Tang Wan that Sujiajia realized that this little boy was the one who took her away as mentioned in the text message. But what can such a little boy do? Sujiajia knew that the Si family had no intention of adopting her, so she might as well follow Uncle Ho to go abroad to get gold plating and then come back. She was really fed up with those mediocre and strange looks. What do they know? It's not you who traffics in people. If you want to blame it, blame that woman Suli. She did all the bad things, what does it have to do with herself? Sujiajia became angry when she thought of this. If it weren't for Suli, would she be like a rat in the gutter? Sujiajia and Tang Wan were quite far apart and could not hear clearly what they were saying. I only knew that the foreign boy seemed to be very interested in Tang Wan. She was so jealous that her teeth almost broke. It's like this again, it's like this again. Tang Wan always gets everyone's attention so easily. But soon, Sujiajia saw Tang Wan being pulled away by Chen Chuo, leaving only the foreign boy staying there, seemingly thinking about something. Sujiajia walked out of the corner after confirming that Tang Wan had completely left. She was about to say hello, but the little boy grabbed her hair. His voice was a little gloomy. Different from the unskilled Chinese look just now, he spoke Chinese very fluently. "Be quiet and don't disturb me." Sujiajia was pressed against the guardrail next to him. Her wrists hurt, but she did not dare to scream. His wrist must be broken. Isn't this foreign boy specially invited by Uncle Ho to take him away? Why do you do this to yourself? The little boy continued to speak, as if talking to himself. Who is that girl? I really want to put her in the window. So lovely. Suddenly, Sujiajia realized who the little boy was talking about, and she quickly said, I know who she is. She is Tang Wan. As soon as these words came out, before Sujiajia could react, there was a click and her hand was twisted off. Before the scream could be heard, the little boy hit him on the back of the neck with a knife, and then carried him away like a sack. He looked at the direction Tang Wan left and whistled. Hans said, what a coincidence. Akyu, Tang Wan sneezed unconsciously. She rubbed the tip of her itchy nose, feeling a little strange. My fever and cold are gone, why do I still sneeze? Old God Lu Ziyi, who was holding ice cream in his hand, said, some people must be thinking about you. Tang Wan raised his head in confusion, not knowing where the statement came from. Lu Ziyi opened his mouth and took a big bite of the ice cream in front of him. Then he was shaken by the cold and said, Don't they all say I think twice and curse? Someone must be thinking about Tang Tang, will make Tang Tang sneeze. As he spoke, he nodded seriously, as if confirming what he said. Chen Shuo rolled his eyes angrily, and then walked aside, as if he was ashamed to be in the company of Lu Ziyi. The three of them got on the jumping machine. Before getting on, Lu Ziyi asked specifically, "Aren't you afraid of heights?" Tang Wan shook his head. "She is not afraid of heights or these things." Chen Shuo's face looked a little strange. Tang Wan blinked and chose to sit between Lu Ziyi and Chen Shuo. The seat belt was slowly fastened, and Chen Shuo had a straight face, looking even more serious and cold. His palms also seemed to have some sweat, causing him to loosen them unconsciously. But the weak wind could not dissipate the wetness on his fingertips. Chen Shuo clenched his teeth unconsciously. Hearing the sound of machine movement in his ears, his heartbeat gradually accelerated. The jumping machine kept rising, and the feeling of weightlessness made Chen Shuo feel dizzy. The people who were standing next to him a moment ago gradually turned into the size of ants. They became smaller and smaller, indicating that they were getting taller and taller. Chen Shuo's face was extremely pale, almost as white as a piece of paper. He closed his eyes tightly and clenched his hands into fists, as if he could escape the fear. Suddenly, a pair of soft hands were placed on his hands. Chen Shuo opened his eyes in surprise, but what he saw was next to him. Tang Wan turned his head, his obsidian eyes full of Chen Shuo. She tilted her head, and the panda ears on her head swayed. Suddenly, the jumping machine dropped rapidly, making Chen Shuo nervous. But all he could see was Tang Wan's appearance. Tang Wan suddenly laughed. Like a flower that suddenly bloomed, with a happy look on her beautiful face. At this moment the screams all around are no longer important. He could only see Tang Wan in front of his eyes. Everything in the world had faded away, and only Tang Wan was alive. It is the temperature of her palms and her smile. Her presence was so strong that it made him panic. He couldn't tell whether his heartbeat was beating rapidly because of extreme sports, or whether he was moved by a smile at this moment. The current situation does not allow him to think rationally. With the sound of bump, night fell, and fireworks bloomed behind Tang Wan. Chen Shuo's pupils shrank, feeling that he had fallen into a trap. His sense of security at this moment can only come from Tang Wan in front of him. She is the only one in his sight. He could even think calmly that this was the suspension bridge effect, not any emotion. Chen Shuo closed his eyes again, and the jumping machine stopped operating. He took the lead to leave the machine and return to his calm and self-possessed appearance. Unknown to everyone, the way he just lost control has been photographed by someone. The photos were flown abroad and to Xiangjiang. Only the smell of gunpowder smoke from falling fireworks was left at the scene. Spread silently. Thanks to Jinzi Wanzizi, the CP I knocked on will never be rewarded by the 2 treasures, so I am so generous. Thanks to Book Friends 2023-011-7288. CE, Eternity. Or, Jinzi Wanzizi, Shayadai, Zwandian, Book Friends 20230603441148, Falling Flowers in the Light Rain, and 7 treasures for their monthly votes. Love you. Also, wow, after so many years of writing novels, it's the first time I've received such a big reward, and I'm a little excited. Thank you Jinji Wanjiji for being my first ally, equals degree omega degree. The update will be updated later, probably early in the morning. If you can't wait, go to bed early. The same will happen tomorrow. Love you. Thank you all for your continued support. This novel could not have been written to this point without you. I will continue to focus on the content. Also, I hope everyone can keep reading QWQ, it is very important to me to follow it. I am a bit chatty, so thank you all, Bayazai Haihan. There are many treasures who vote for me every day. I have seen them all. Some treasures are not talkative. I also know that every time everyone comes, they will leave some traces. I am really happy. I am not a very confident person, thank you all for your encouragement. Let's go on together in the future. Love you so much. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 115. Hong Kong. Fu Wenzi looked at the photos uploaded on the computer and lowered the corners of his mouth. Then he closed the computer screen, picked up the mint candy from the desktop, put it in his mouth and took 2 bites. The hard candy shattered instantly, and the mint core inside suddenly fell on the tip of his tongue. The cold feeling made Fu Wenzi wake up suddenly. The depression in his heart seemed to dissipate, and he returned to his normal calmness. Just tapping his fingers on the table from time to time, looking very restless. Finally, Fu Wenzi looked at the photo, saved it, and said, "It's quite leisurely." Mr. Fu, who came down from the 2nd floor, looked at his son and frowned. Zhiziamoruofu knew at a glance that this brat was in a bad mood, so he asked, "What's wrong?" Fu Wenzi glanced at his father in surprise and asked, "Father, am I really not allowed to transfer to another school?" Mr. Fu raised his eyebrows and looked a little surprised. It's just that what he said was not satisfactory, of course not. Fu Wenzi nodded, with no trace of reluctance on his face. This look made Mr. Fu think that he had just misread Fu Wenzi's expression. It's just that he was very familiar with his son, so he reminded him, "Don't do anything illegal or disciplinary." Fu Wenzi didn't even raise his head and replied casually, "I understand, father." On the other side, Tang Wan and Lu Ziyi returned home, and what they greeted was not Lu Yao but Lu Lin, who had not been home for a long time. As soon as Tang Wan saw Lu Lin, she ran over, hugged Lu Lin, and rubbed her little face against Lu Lin. Tang Wan was very unskilled in doing the series of movements at first, even a little shy, but he couldn't help but like Lu Lin. Moreover, if Tang Wan didn't take the initiative to do this, Lu Lin would come over and stick to it. Instead of being so passive, it is better to take the initiative. Tang Wan was thinking in such a simple and unpretentious way. Lu Ziyi on the side looked a little greedy. He also wanted to have with Tang Wan. But as long as my uncle is here, I shouldn't think about such things. It's not my turn at all. Lu Lin brought gifts to Tang Wan and Lu Ziyi. I brought photos of my crew to Tang Wan, and I bought a small wooden handicraft for Lu Ziyi. Tang Wan looked at the exquisite photos in his hand with bright eyes. Lu Lin was in a good mood seeing Tang Wan like him so much. He realized very early that Tang Wan liked this kind of thing that could be preserved. Tang Wan will keep the trivial candy wrappers, and Tang Wan will keep the larger ones and put them in her little treasure box or little treasure cabinet. It's worth mentioning that Tang Wan's little treasure chest and cabinet were made for Tang Wan with the participation of family members. She cherishes it very much and likes it very much. Touch it a few times before going to bed every day, so that you can sleep with peace of mind. Not only that, but I will wipe them from time to make sure they are clean. The nanny is not allowed to get started yet. Lu Lin also likes to see Tang Wan like this, so whenever Lu Lin is at home, he and Tang Wan will wipe together. Lu Lin hadn't been with Tang Wan for a while when he saw Lu Yao hurriedly walking in from outside. Her expression looked very bad, and the expression on her face was a little heavy. Lu Lin couldn't hold it back and asked, "What's wrong?" Lu Yao glanced at the 2 children, but finally decided not to carry them on her back, and said to Lu Lin, "Sujiajia is gone." Lu Lin hasn't heard from Sujiajia for a long time. Since Sujiajia's mother was arrested, Lu Lin didn't care much about Sujiajia's movements. I only know that he was taken back by the Si family. Sijia Group also has a welfare home with complete facilities, so there is no need to worry about Sujiajia being wronged. But Sujiajia disappeared under the eyes of the Si family, which is really interesting. Lu Lin raised his eyelids casually, combed Tang Wan's hair, and said, "How can she throw away so many surveillance cameras?" It's not that Lu Lin looked down on Sujiajia, nor was it that Lu Lin looked down on the person who took Sujiajia away. It's just that almost all surveillance in Kyoto can disappear, so how much energy does it take? However, as soon as these words came out, Lu Yao's expression became even worse. I could see that she left on her own, but there was a problem with the monitoring afterwards. Some are undergoing maintenance, and some are shut down by chance. When the surveillance light came on again 100 meters later, no one could be seen. If it's too far apart, there will be a blind spot. When Lu Lin heard this, he waved his hand and was not ready to listen anymore. He said somewhat playfully, "That's really interesting. There are so many surveillance systems, but something suddenly went wrong today." Today. Tang Wan was a little surprised when he heard what Lu Lin and Lu Yao said. Is it such a coincidence? I met a little boy who looked scary. Sujiajia also disappeared today, and the surveillance camera was also broken today. But Tang Wan had no evidence and could not just rely on his own feelings to say that there was something wrong with the little boy. So Tang Wan just wrote down this matter and kept it in his heart. But Lu Lin's voice sounded again, and he asked, "What did the Si family say?" Lu Yao was silent for a moment, and her tone was a little strange. The Si family seems to have expected this, and is not surprised. They didn't say anything. Lu Lin nodded. Then let's not worry about it. The Si family is much better at these things than us. However, Lu Yao looked at Tang Wan with worried eyes, and her tone was rare and heavy. I'm just worried that the people behind Suli and the others are not good for Tang Tang. I think what Suli said when she was in prison last time is very problematic. Lu Lin heard Lu Yao mentioning Suli and hugged Tang Wan tighter. When he thought of the harm Suli had done to Tang Wan, he wanted to avenge Tang Wan himself. Thinking of this, Lu Lin Duo asked, "Does Suli still have a chance to come out?" Lu Yao shook her head and said with some regret in her tone, "Don't think about it, she will never get out of it in her life. Then find some people to go in." Lu Yao. Lu Yao looked at her brother in surprise, unable to believe that he would say this in front of the little boy. However, Lu Lin had already reached out and covered Tang Wan's ears. As for Lu Zi, he had long been used to it and didn't care at all. Tang Wan blinked at Lu Yao and didn't look like he couldn't hear. It's just that she has always been smart. Since Lu Lin didn't want her to hear, she just pretended not to hear. Lu Yao saw that they were deceiving themselves and others in the same way, and felt that they were really not a family that refused to enter the same house. But I didn't point it out. Just nodded, it's okay to arrange for a few people to go in. Take care of her more so that she doesn't have a bad life. Lu Yao is the same as Lu Lin. As a member of the Lu family, the most obvious thing is to protect your shortcomings. I wrote too slowly. Woo woo, good night everyone. I wish you all a good dream. I love you. I am already delirious. I typed the wrong title. I'm a little pig. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 116. Tang Wan heard what they said, pretended to know nothing, and clapped hands with Lu Zi. She was keenly aware that what Lu Lin and Lu Yao were saying was ironic. But so what? They are all family members and they can't be wrong. With this thought in mind, Tang Wan trusted his family. Even though there is no blood relationship between them, their kindness to themselves is real. Compared with those illusory things, only what is in front of you is real. At this moment, Lu Lin's cell phone suddenly rang. He put Tang Wan on the sofa, walked out with his cell phone, and spoke in a language unfamiliar to Tang Wan. Lu Yao reached out and touched the hat on Tang Wan's head, took a piece of watermelon from the table and put it in Tang Wan's hand. "Don't be stunned, eat some fruit." Tang Wan opened his mouth and took a bite. The sides of his cheeks were bulging, like a little hamster eating, which made him look particularly soft-hearted. Lu Yao couldn't hold it back and rubbed Tang Wan's head again. Tang Wan bit the watermelon and looked at Lu Yao blankly, feeling a little at a loss. Lu Ziyi on the side also had itchy hands and wanted to touch Tang Wan. However, as soon as he raised his hand, his mother glared at him. Lu Ziyi pursed his lips, sat back down unhappily, and then took a hard bite of the apple in his hand, feeling a little indignant. "Damn it! Why everyone can need Tang Tang, but only you can't?" So angry. Lu Lin came back from the phone call and saw Lu Ziyi, who was as angry as a pufferfish. But he had long been accustomed to it. He did not set his sights on Lu Ziyi. Instead, he asked Tang Wan, "Chris wants to invite you to his cruise party. Do you want to go?" Tang Wan swallowed the watermelon in his mouth, stretched out his hand, and signed. "But don't you have to go to school tomorrow?" Lu Lin waved his hand and said in a nonchalant tone, "Then I'll take a few more days off. When you come back, just ask a tutor to make up for the progress." Tang Wan nodded. She also wanted to see those cruise parties that appeared in books. Lu Ziyi, who was on the side, saw that Lu Lin didn't even ask himself. He took Lu Lin's hand, pointed at himself, and said excitedly, "Where's me? Where's me? Where's me, uncle?" Lu Lin narrowed his eyes slightly, looking like a fox with malicious intentions. He looked at the jumping Lu Ziyi and deliberately teased him, "You need to go back to school." "Huh?" Lu Ziyi's mouth opened wide and he looked like he was about to cry. "Can't I come with you? Didn't Chris invite me?" Tang Wan looked at Lu Lin and smiled evilly, as if he saw a fox tail suddenly growing out from behind him. Lu Yao on the side shook her head. "I feel that my brother is really childish. But it would be meaningless to have children if you don't play with them." Finally, when Lu Ziyi was about to cry, Lu Lin spoke slowly, "You want to go too? Then you have to follow your aunt and let your aunt take you in." Lu Ziyi's eyes lit up, he hugged Tang Wan, took off on the spot, and jumped several times. "Tang Tang will take me there." "Right." Tang Wan was stunned by Lu Ziyi's sudden movement, and then the world started to spin. Unfortunately, Lu Ziyi's proud mood did not last long, and Tang Wan was taken away by Lu Lin. Not only that, Lu Lin also slapped Lu Ziyi on the back of the head and said angrily, "Don't spin around with Tang Tang in your arms. What if you fall? It is not a trivial matter for two cubs as big as peas to fall together." Lu Ziyi was a little hurt from being patted, but he didn't care. It wasn't a big deal anyway. Instead, it was Tang Wan who jumped down from Lu Lin's arms and rubbed the place where Lu Ziyi was slapped with her soft little hands. He is still whispering in his mouth, as if he is talking. Snoring and purring, "It doesn't hurt." Lu Ziyi could only smile stupidly. Lu Yao glanced at her son who was smiling like a fool and felt that he really couldn't have him. After Lu Lin and Toulouse had discussed it, they asked Tang Wan to go back and rest early. As for the dresses and gifts to be prepared, that is a matter for adults. Children only need to live happily. But Tang Wan didn't want to prepare nothing. Adults have adult entertainment, and children have children's emotional exchanges. It is correct for everyone to have nothing to do with each other. So Tang Wan trotted all the way to the kitchen, preparing to make some dessert. Tang Wan knew that he didn't have anything he was good at. He only had desserts that everyone liked. Lu Ziyi, who was following Tang Wan, looked at Tang Wan's back longingly and said with some taste, "Tang Tang didn't even make a dessert for me." These words were so bitter that Lu Yao couldn't hold back and slapped Lu Ziyi on the back of the head. "Ouch!" Lu Ziyi frowned and covered his head with a somewhat dissatisfied tone. "Mom, why do you keep beating me? You'll be the one to beat me if I'm stupid in the future." Lu Yao sneered and replied nonchalantly, You are already incredibly stupid, how can you be stupider? Lu Ziyi wanted to say something else, but he heard Lu Yao say, you didn't realize that Tang Wan was trying to avoid suspicion. Huh, Lu Ziyi doesn't like to play tricks on his family, so when he's at home, Lu Ziyi's IQ is always negative. He blinked his eyes like a goose. Then he heard his dear mother say, if your brother-in-law prepares gifts for the Andrew family, then you children will have a relationship of interest in the eyes of others. But what if Tang Wan prepared a less expensive handmade gift? That means there is real feelings between you. At least compared to cooperation with interests, you have a relationship that won't be broken so easily. Lu Ziyi tilted his head and asked with some confusion, but Mom, didn't you say that there is no relationship stronger than interests? Then do you think that the relationship between you and Tang Tang is fragile if there is no mutual interest? Lu Ziyi frowned, his IQ went up. He didn't like what his mother said. Lu Yao's voice sounded beside him, just like the countless times Lu Yao taught Lu Ziyi how to face the world. So, sometimes human nature is complicated. Sometimes, feelings are fragile, and sometimes, they are tough. Similarly, there are people's beliefs when these things that sound illusory are put into practice, they will exert their unprecedented energy. We are businessmen, and when we are doing business, we cannot underestimate people's feelings. At some point, these feelings also have unlimited potential. Lu Ziyi looked at Tang Wan, who was busy in the kitchen, and stepped forward to enter. He understands. But this kind of sincere feelings must first be given sincerely. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 117. Lu Yao looked at Lu Ziyi, who was following Tang Wan, and subconsciously took out a cigarette from her pocket. She just touched her pockets and didn't find a cigarette. She curled her lips silently, looked at the two little people busy in the kitchen, and stretched. The life assistant on the side quickly handed over the cigarette, but Lu Yao shook her head. Forget it. Her voice was a little hoarse, but there was no bad emotion. The kids don't like me smoking. Stop doing. She will have to stay with her idiot son for a long time, and at least she will have to watch Lu Ziyi become a responsible adult. Thinking of this, Lu Yao combed her hair, took her coat, and told the others, okay, adults must also abide by etiquette. Go and prepare a gift for the Andrew family. Yes. On the second day, Tang Wan and Lu Ziyi put on blue dresses of the same color and followed Lu Lin onto the cruise ship. The difference between the guest invitation letters is that the invitation letter in Tang Wan's hand is handwritten. The handwriting on it is still crooked, and some Chinese characters are missing arms and legs, as if they are afraid of being recognized. As for Lu Ziyi's name, it was written in pencil in the very corner. It can be seen that the person who wrote this invitation really does not want this name to appear. Tang Wan looked at the bright double logo in front of him and pressed Lu Ziyi's name with his thumb. For no other reason than to worry that Lu Ziyi would be sad after seeing it. Tang Wan is a very considerate kid, but the security guard standing at the door didn't recognize this kind of invitation for playing house. Had it not been for seeing the second son of the Lu family standing next to them, they would never have let Tang Wan and the others in. Tang Wan could feel that there were several pairs of eyes staring at him when they entered the cruise ship. Tang Wan didn't make any reaction, but Lu Ziyi beside her held Tang Wan's hand tightly and said, Tang Tang, don't leave my side, there are too many people here, it's easy to get lost. After speaking, Lu Ziyi stretched out his hand to change the position of the Prada crystal hairpin on Tang Wan's head, and muttered in a low voice, Go 11 has good taste. This brand suits Tang Tang very well. Looking lively. Lively. Tang Wan doesn't think he is a lively person. She felt quite calm. Tang Wan listened to Lu Ziyi's words, and his eyes that seemed to be able to speak blinked. She was wearing the latest model from Chanel's spring show, with a pair of black sandals on her feet. When the black gauze skirt was blown up by the sea breeze, it looked like swaying waves. The waist is then embellished with dazzling gemstones, adding a touch of agility to the smart black gauze. Tang Wan does not have pierced ears, but the red and white on her neck complement the gems on her chest. It seems that the suffering has faded away, leaving only the brilliance of the gems. Lu Ziyi held Tang Wan's hand and walked into the cruise ship banquet, and the night had just begun. The moment Tang Wan's figure disappeared, a white head suddenly appeared on the second floor of the cruise ship. It was the little boy Tang Wan saw at the amusement park. He was obviously smiling, but there was no warmth in his eyes. On the contrary, the man beside him looked at the direction in which Tang Wan disappeared, smiled, and said in Sicilian, "Fur, is this the kid you like? Even for her sake, I am prepared to stay in this eastern country for a few more days." Fal looked away, his blue eyes deeper than the sea water at night. His voice did not even lose its childishness, but his words were more coherent than those of an average adult. "Godfather, don't you think she is suitable for collection? That pretty face and obsidian eyes are really beautiful." The man took a deep drag on his cigarette. The deep V sapphire blue suit on his body gave him an indescribable sense of sluttishness. "Foor, she is Tang Wan, the child of that woman. And now, behind her, stands the Lu family. There is an old saying in this beautiful eastern country, a strong dragon cannot overpower a local snake. Now you cannot own this unique collection." Iwulfer looked at his godfather with his blue eyes, like a wolf ready to attack. "It's just that he is too young." But the man did not laugh at him. Just blew out a smoke ring and smiled exaggeratedly, "Then I'll wait until you can collect this treasure." After saying that, he turned away from the railing and said to the bodyguard beside him, "Throw that child named Sujiajia down." The bodyguard said hesitantly, "But this is not the high seas." However, as soon as he finished speaking, the knife in the man's hand was pressed against the temple of the bodyguard. His tone was not very good, but it was calm. "Choose one, she will go down, or you will go down." The bodyguard was so frightened that he was sweating. When he was about to answer, a figure came from behind the man. "Cand Irvin, I told you that my party does not like blood." Hearing the man's voice, Cand Elwin immediately retracted the knife in his hand, opened his arms, and said in an exaggerated tone, "My dear friend, I will not make it difficult for you. Besides, can you please stop calling me this scary name? I'm afraid your banquet won't be held." Toulouse heard Candelwin's words, was silent for a moment, and called out, "Carlyle Poulos." Candwin shrugged, walked to Toulouse, and gave him a big hug. There were sharp tiger teeth in the open mouth, which glowed faintly in the moonlight. "I would also like to thank my friends for giving me a reason to come to this beautiful country." Toulouse's face was a little ugly. He knocked Candelwin's hand off angrily and said angrily, "This is not a place for people like you. Leave as soon as you finish your work." After saying that, Toulouse walked down the second floor, but the bodyguard standing next to Candwin did not dare to take a breath. "Okay, since Toulouse has said so, let the kid go to Sicily by water. You can't do all these things well, right?" When the bodyguard heard Candwin's words, he nodded quickly, not even daring to wipe the sweat from his forehead. He knew that he had survived. Tang Wan looked at the glamorous world in front of him, feeling the eyes that were looking at him with indifference, but he walked towards Chris openly. When Chris saw Tang Wan, the death or death expression on his face suddenly became brighter. He was like a happy puppy, jumping up and down towards Tang Wan, so Lu Ziyi who was beside Tang Wan couldn't help but block in front of Tang Wan. After living here for several months, Chris's Chinese has made a qualitative leap. He looked at Lu Ziyi, put his hands on his hips, looking like an angry teapot, and said one sentence. "A good dog stays out of the way." The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 118. His voice was too firm. Everyone was stunned for a moment when I said it. Lu Ziyi is not a person who would aggrieve himself. In front of his family, Lu Ziyi may be a little childish, but in front of outsiders, Lu Ziyi is not a person who swallows his anger. Just as Lu Ziyi was about to unbutton his sleeves, he heard Chris add another sentence. It's enough for Tang Tang to have me as a dog by her side. Obviously, Chris's Chinese is still not very good, and he even used the wrong quantifier for dog. Lu Ziyi. Tang Wan was shocked by these words. Why are there still people vying to be dogs? But when her eyes fell on the proud Chris, she seemed to really see furry ears growing on Chris. Especially when Chris' eyes met Tang Wan's, he looked particularly happy. If there was a tail behind him, it would definitely make a shadow. Tang Wan lowered his head slightly, covering the corners of his slightly raised mouth. Really? A bit like a puppy. Lu Ziyi, on the other hand, can no longer be troubled by Chris. His sleeves were rolled up, and Chris said this to himself. Why did he say so proudly? The personal trainer standing in the corner slowly stretched out his hand and covered his eyes. It's over, it's over. Her job with a monthly salary of 100,000 yuan is about to go away. People around him were whispering, but Chris was an outgoing and confident boy, and there was no falsehood at all. He walked straight up to Tang Wan and immediately saw the gift bag in Tang Wan's hand. He asked with bright eyes, "Is this for me? Is it specially made for me?" Tang Wan nodded and handed the gift in his hand to Chris. Seeing Chris grab Tang Wan's hand in an exaggerated manner and place a kiss on the back of her hand, he imitated an adult and said the social etiquette that only belongs to children, "Thank you, beautiful lady. Do you need a puppy now?" With a look of eagerness, it seemed that as long as Tang Wan said something necessary, Chris would pack himself up and go to the Lu family. Lu Lin couldn't bear it any longer. He raised his foot and kicked Toulouse, who was still watching the fun, and said angrily, "Why don't you stop it? If this continues, tomorrow someone will say that your Chris is our Tang Tang's child. Got a husband?" Lu Lin spoke very quickly, and Toulouse couldn't react to some syllables. But he is a man who extracts important information. Tang Tang and child breadwinner, isn't this a good thing? Thinking of this, Toulouse nodded and said seriously, "I just wronged Tang Tang. This brat of ours doesn't deserve it. Don't worry, we will give you a lot of money." When Lu Lin heard this, the expression on his face was completely unbearable. Placing the cup in his hand heavily on the table, he said coldly, "You're dreaming. Damn thing." When Toulouse heard Lu Lin's words, the corners of his mouth raised wider and wider. "Very good, this friend of mine not only does not object to Tang Tang and Chris's marriage, but also supports it. You should know that dogs represent loyalty in their family. This is a compliment. The highest praise. Children don't know the twists and turns on the adult's side." Tang Wan just had a headache looking at Chris in front of her. She was just about to raise her hand, sign language, and ask Lu Ziyi to translate for her. The next second, Chris put his furry head in Tang Wan's hand. He was very happy. The little curly hair really looks like a puppy. Others have always rubbed Tang Wan's head, but this is a rare occasion for Tang Wan to rub other people's heads. Don't mention it, the interaction between two beautiful cubs like this is really pretty. It would be better if the little kid behind them didn't look so ugly. Lu Ziyi finally couldn't bear it anymore, pulled Tang Wan's hand away, and said seriously, "You can't touch the children outside." As he spoke, he suppressed his shame, put Tang Wan's hand on his head, and whispered, "If you want to touch it, just touch my head." Lu Lin looked at their suffocating operation and couldn't help but said, "Does your brother have any magic?" "What?" Toulouse watched it with great interest, and had not yet realized Lu Lin's strange aura. "Magic that can turn people around you into idiots." "Idiot." As Lu Lin finished speaking, a familiar venomous tongue came from the child. Tang Wan turned around and saw Chenchuo, who had arrived late, and Fu Wenzi, long time no see. But Tang Wan saw that although Fu Wenzi still had a fake smile on his face, his eyes were as cold as ever. Looks a little scary. Chris, who was out of the situation, grabbed Tang Wan's other hand and spoke in Chinese that was not yet proficient. It looks better on the top deck. I asked Turus to prepare a barbecue, a telescope, a swimming pool, etc. for us to play together. Speaking of this, Chris also took Tang Wan's hand, leaned close to Tang Wan's ear, and whispered, "I also prepared a gift for you." Tang Wan blinked his eyes, the ends of his eyes curved like a bright moon. She likes to receive gifts, especially those that can be saved. Whenever I see gifts like that, I feel that they can save time. As he said that, he was about to drag Tang Wan to the deck, but Fu Wenzi on the side suddenly said, "Chris, are we going to?" Chris didn't know why Fu Wenzi pointed it out specifically, but he still nodded, "Of course, no one will be left behind." Suddenly Tang Wan stopped and pointed to the Go family next to him. Hinted to indicate that Go 11 was not coming. Chris scratched his head in confusion and whispered, "There is nothing we can do, Zixi is training, she is about to compete." Tang Wan knew about this, she just wanted to say that if everyone is not here now, everyone is missing. Just when Tang Wan was about to take out the tablet and explain it to himself, Fu Wenzi on the side suddenly said, "Tang Tang means that everyone is gone." After saying that, he followed Tang Wan skillfully, looking like Tang Wan's little tail. It's just that his presence is too strong, making the tail very abrupt. Lu Zi, who was squeezed into a corner, twitched the corner of his mouth. He rushed into the crowd, picked up his ant and started running. Damn it! Why are so many people pestering Tang Tang? Kendwin, who was still on the second floor, looked at the commotion below, whistled, and said nonchalantly, "Fuer, many people are robbing you." The earrings on Fuer's ears reflected the moonlight, making them look very cold. He looked in the direction of Tang Wan and replied, "Beautiful babies will be coveted." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw the tail that had been following Tang Wan. The expression that had been calm just now suddenly turned gloomy. He pursed his lips, lowered his head and cursed, "Shit! Why is that mad dog here? Thanks to Jin Zi Wan Zi and I want to be the king of the sea. Today is also a day for the two treasures to reward you. I love you. Thanks to Lian Yu, Zixia Mumwu, 19, at dancer at, book friends 2023-092-8946. EC, Xiaodondan, book friends 20210301106561745450, Miss Zhang who doesn't want to be MRS Wang, Kishan. CA, monk without a home, Jinzi Wan Ziji, today is also a day when I want to be the king of the sea. Book friend 20230130707623. Monthly tickets for 13 treasures. It's a new month, I wish everyone a happy new month too. Be happy every day. I love you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 119. Chapter 119 Broken Moonlight. As if sensing Fuer's gaze, Fu Wenzi, who was walking beside Tang Wan, suddenly raised his hand. He saw Fuer looking at him, the smile hanging on the corner of his mouth paused slightly, and then his cold eyes stared at Fuer, like a poisonous snake ready to attack. Kendwin's expression on the side was not very good either. After all, if Fu Wenzi is here, his crazy father is probably nearby. If there is anyone that Cand Elwin least wants to meet in front of everyone, the Fu family must be on the list. Of course, the Fu family is not the only family that Cand Elwin hates. There are also families that they have killed long ago, as well as the Si family that is still surviving. Friendship between families bound by interests. Similarly, interests can also divide their friendship into two. Cand Irwin turned around and saw Turris standing next to him. He had a gloomy look on his face and said quickly in Sicilian, "You don't trust me. You clearly know that the Fu family has a hostile relationship with us." However, Toulouse just spread his hands and looked quite romantic. The shirt on his body was blown by the sea breeze, causing ripples like ocean waves, and he seemed to have a swaying look. The tone of his words was a little careless, as if he didn't see the murderous intent in Candlewin's eyes. How could it be? "You know, the Fu family also cooperates with our family. Carlyle, we are legal citizens." Candwin naturally did not expect that Toulouse would admit it openly at this time. His anger lasted only for a moment. He quickly calmed down his emotions and became as calm and strategizing as usual. The speed at which he changed his attitude was so fast that it seemed that the murderous intention just for a moment was just Toulouse's illusion. Candwin stretched out his hand, straightened Toulouse's collar, then patted Toulouse on the shoulder, and said in a dark and unintelligible tone, "Good job. As expected of my good brother." Fall followed Candwin, nodded in the direction of Toulouse, then turned and left. The smile on Toulouse's face collapsed the moment Cand Elwin and others disappeared. He lit a cigarette silently, looked at Tang Wan and his group, and blew out a smoke ring. Muttered in his mouth, "What is the purpose of Cand Elwin coming here? Isn't he always indifferent to this place?" However, the sea breeze just took away the smoke around him and floated it into the distance without anyone answering. Tang Wan walked up to the top deck and looked at the outdoor swimming pool, slightly stunned. To be honest, even though Tang Wan had already had a premonition and knew that the swimming pool in front of him would not be too mediocre, he did not expect that the swimming pool in front of him would be so different. It is a typical infinity swimming pool. Surrounded by open-air speakers, there are countless snacks and drinks. They are all neatly arranged, making OCD very comfortable. Tang Wan slowly raised his head. The skylight above the head is half open. There is a button for the skylight at the edge of the deck. Just press it and the deck will close. The stars above the head are twinkling, and even the moonlight is particularly gentle. Chris was familiar with everything here. He took Tang Wan into the locker room, which was filled with countless swimsuits. They are all one-piece swimsuits suitable for children. He didn't even look at the swimsuits, he just sent Tang Wan to the locker room and was about to leave. There was no hesitation in his attitude, he was very gentlemanly. Tang Wan slowly let go of his hand and looked at the slightly pursed corners of his mouth in the mirror before he realized how nervous he was. She turned around, looked at these beautiful swimsuits behind her, stretched out her hand, and touched them with trembling fingertips. "The fabric of the swimsuit is soft and seems to be more delicate than my scarred hands." She subconsciously chose a dark swimsuit with not much color on it. It was a swimsuit that would be ignored even if it was hidden in a corner. Just the moment you pick it up. Tang Wan's mind flashed with Lu Lin's appearance. She is no longer the child who needed to hide. She can choose the color she likes. Thinking of this, Tang Wan's hand came to a sky blue swimsuit without any hesitation this time. She took off her swimsuit, then took off her skirt, revealing her limbs with flesh-colored scars. And the neck with dark red marks. Her skin is delicate and fair. It's just the criss-crossing scars that ruin the beauty. There are still some unhealed smoke scars on those hideous wounds. They are like bone-eroding flowers growing on thorns, tightly binding Tang Wan's soul. Beneath her fragile body is a soul covered in wounds. But Tang Wan did not keep his eyes on the wound for a long time. She put on her swimsuit calmly, and the marks on her limbs looked even more abrupt on the sky blue swimsuit. Those raised scars were like shackles on Tang Wan's soul, making her bear a heavy burden. Tang Wan looked directly at his scar for the first time. They are ugly. Is also something you need to remember. She could not remember who hurt her or who saved her. She wore this scar like a test paper with the answers covered, trying to find traces from the clues inside. It's just a pity that everything is still in vain. Tang Wan collected his emotions, then opened the door and walked out. The cool wind blew on Tang Wan's body, causing her to shiver. The children's eyes fell on Tang Wan, and they were all a little dull. In other words, I am a bit unable to react. They didn't expect that there was such a body under the tightly covered clothes. They have seen scars. If you want to be an excellent heir, you must go through hardships. When those heavy fists, or swords, guns, and sticks hit oneself, it will be painful. It's just that they are not as ferocious as the scars on Tang Wan's body. Like a monster, devouring Tang Wan. It turned out that not an inch of her skin hidden under her clothes was intact. Chen Shuo lowered his head, as if he was burned by the scars on Tang Wan's body, but his fingers were tightly grasping the railing. Lu Ziyi stood a little far away and did not immediately notice anything unusual here. As for Fu Wenzi, he was the first to react. He took a blanket, walked to Tang Wan, and put the blanket on Tang Wan's shoulders. The tone of voice sounded the same as usual, as if the scars had not been seen. Be careful of catching a cold. Just the look in his raised eyes didn't have much warmth in it, and even the hypocritical smile that had been hanging on the corner of his mouth didn't know what was missing at this moment. The little Tang Wan was wrapped in a blanket and said something in sign language. Thanks. Then he opened his legs and walked toward the swimming pool. She sat on the edge of the swimming pool, stretching out her feet and making waves. The broken moonlight fell on her body. Like a crumbling flower. I'm sorry. I was out today and just came back. I finished the update. Woohoo, please save me my dears. There will be another update, or two, later. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 120. It is obviously not a shameful scene, but it carries a holy connotation on Tang Wan. Perhaps because Tang Wan was like this, he attracted their attention. Fu Wenzi followed Tang Wan and then entered the water. Under the rippling swimming pool is a nimble fish. Tang Wan did not miss the scene of Fu Wenzi entering the water. She subconsciously wanted to take back her feet, but was held by a hand stretched out from the water. Fu Wenzi acted as if he didn't see the scars on Tang Wan's body and just said, Tang Tang, do you want to learn to swim? Tang Wan is a little afraid of water. Being able to sit on the edge and play in the water is the limit. Going into the water? That was something she couldn't even think about. The suffocation in the water made her feel uncomfortable. She felt that she should not be afraid of water. But I really don't dare to go into the water. Fu Wenzi shook his head when he saw Tang Wan, and did not continue to invite Tang Wan into the water. Instead, he swam a long distance by himself. Lu Ziyi, who finally came here, saw Tang Wan sitting next to the swimming pool at a glance, and ran over excitedly. Like a running puppy. But he was so happy that he felt sad. His feet got wet and slipped, and he fell to the ground. Even because of the water on the ground, it slipped a long distance at once. He was about to bump into Tang Wan. Lu Ziyi was so shocked that he kept shouting, Tang Tang. Get out of the way. But it was too late. Tang Wan was hit by him and fell from the edge of the swimming pool. With a plop, Tang Wan fell into the swimming pool. Her breath was suddenly submerged by the pool water, and her eyes also took on the color of nothingness. The feeling of suffocation came to the depths of her soul as she breathed. She saw someone in her ethereal sight, being pushed into the water again and again. Tang Wan blinked and struggled to reach out and grab the man's hand. I want to shout out. Let her go. Let her go. However, she was too weak and couldn't even break away from the water that was everywhere. At this moment, a hand took hold of Tang Wan's struggling hand, and cold fingers passed through Tang Wan's fingers. The two held each other tightly, as if they caught Tang Wan, who was diving at this moment. Then handed Tang Wan away from the suffocating pool water. With a crash, Tang Wan broke through the water and was hugged by Fu Wenzi. He swam with one hand and brought Tang Wan back to the edge of the swimming pool. Lu Ziyi, who was standing anxiously on the edge, also relaxed at this moment. He grabbed Tang Wan and pulled her ashore. Then he wiped Tang Wan's wet hair with a towel and kept saying, "Tang Tang, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Are you okay? Did you choke on the water? Would you like me to take you down to change your clothes? The temperature on the deck is not low. The temperature cycle above is always on. Even if you enter the water, you will not feel pure coldness. Even some warmth." Tang Wan shook his head, gathered the blanket on the ground with his hands, and retracted himself to a safe area. "Looks like a sea otter that fell into the water, wet and a little pitiful." Lu Ziyi felt guilty. "I'm afraid Tang Wan is crying. What should I do?" He really didn't want Tang Wan to cry. He just wanted Tang Wan to smile happily. It would be better if you could forget the previous unhappiness. So Lu Ziyi knelt down and wanted to see Tang Wan's face. Suddenly, a stream of warm water fell on Lu Ziyi's face, interrupting Lu Ziyi's movements. Lu Ziyi raised his head blankly and saw Tang Wan's smiling face. Not angry. Didn't cry either. There is no fear either. Lu Ziyi breathed a sigh of relief. However, the next second, a hand stretched out from the water and pulled Lu Ziyi into the water. Lu Ziyi accidentally choked on the water in the swimming pool. He struggled for a long time to get up from the water, then stretched out his hand to Fu Wenzi beside him and cursed. "Are you sick? Why are you dragging me? A gentle puppy in front of the family, but very violent outside. Especially for the little ones he doesn't like." Lu Ziyi really hates Fu Wenzi, who pesters Tang Wan every time. Tang Tang is not from their family. Every time he comes to rob. Chris on the side saw that they were about to fight, and hurriedly stepped forward to break up the fight. At this moment, a little boy with white hair came from the stairs. He said in broken Chinese, "Yes, is it you? Yang, doll." Hearing the voice, Tang Wan slowly turned his head and saw the little boy he saw at the playground. "I didn't expect to see him here. What a coincidence." By coincidence, Tang Wan thought this was not an accident. It means that someone deliberately appears by your side. It's just that Tang Wan doesn't understand why he wants to come to her. Chris took the initiative to introduce it to Tang Wan. "Tang Tang, this is my playmate Frank Poulos, you can just call him Frank." The smile on Frank's face looked very innocent, with the innocence unique to a child. His blue eyes were full of stars and sea, reflecting a small Tang Wan. He stretched out his hand, his body trembling with anticipation, and stammered, "You, Mud Howl." Chris pointed to Tang Wan, "This is my good friend, Tang Wan, we all call her Tang Tang, she is as sweet as a candy. But you can't call her Tang Tang, it's our nickname." Frank's Mandarin seemed not as good as Chris's. He could only understand a few words and said, "Tang Wan Wan." He stretched out his hand, as if he wanted to shake Tang Wan's hand or give her a kiss on the hand. But at this moment, a cold hand took Tang Wan's hand and blocked it in front of Frank. Tang Wan was hidden behind Fu Wenzi, so she didn't see Fu Wenzi's eyes when he saw Frank. At that moment, with a strong desire to kill the other person, Tang Wan reached out and grabbed Fu Wenzi's wrist. Then he shook his head at Frank. This is the first time Tang Wan refuses to make friends with others. The eyes that fell on Tang Wan were a little dull. Until Tang Wan's figure walked out from behind Fu Wenzi. Her eyes looked directly into those blue eyes. She clearly realized that the boy in front of her was different from any of her playmates. He is dangerous. Is currently uncontrollable. If it were the past, Tang Wan would choose to deal with him, choose the best opportunity, and then seize the opportunity to find out his confidence. But now, Tang Wan can stand beside his friends and behind his elders. But this does not mean that Tang Wan is not brave anymore. But she learned to avoid danger. Then say no bravely. Frank's hands suddenly stopped in mid-air, and his expression was a little stiff. Hands that would not tremble even when holding a gun were trembling strangely at this moment. But he said it in his mouth. Why? Thanks Jinziwan Z's Habayazai for the reward, I love you, okay. Thanks to Jinziwan ZZ, Night Colored Glass, Book Friends 2023-092-8946. EC, and guess for their monthly votes. I am very generous. Sorry, the update is late today. I will definitely update it early tomorrow. Let's set the update time at 8-10 p.m. Additional updates will also be put on the agenda. Woohoo, I'm really sorry, I've been a little stuck during this time. Thank you all for your understanding. I wish you all a happy life and love you all.